Police are still conducting interviews and identifying the culprits and victims as they investigate reports of sexting at junior high schools in Bothell. At least 11 phones have been confiscated from Canyon Park Junior High and Skyview Junior High. Some middle school boys are now under investigation. Police say for pressuring girls into sending naked pictures.
I monitor my son's phone. I check it. I watch it all the time. My phone is actually linked to his phone, so any pictures that go to his phone go to my phone, so I see everything.
Bothell police say the case could ultimately be reviewed by the prosecutor's office. At least one leading psychologist says sexting as a teenager can lead to depression later in life. And we heard that. We wanted to dive deeper. Here to talk about it is best-selling author Dr. Jantz. Always good to see you.
Thank you, Matt.
I want to clarify, this is not your theory. This came from a well-known psychologist over in England. But do you subscribe to it?
It's a trend we're seeing. What we call it is delayed shame syndrome, so to speak. I do a behavior early on in my life. I end up regretting it much later because this behavior can have ramifications I didn't understand at the time.
Well, you treat teenagers.
We do.
And have you seen this, and how does it manifest itself as these people enter adulthood?
It does. And one of the things we see is kids that are getting a little bit older, they're in great regret. They have done things that they are shocked with. And we know that a teenager has what we call this frontal lobe of the brain, our executive function, where we make good decisions. Remember, a teenager, if you ask a teenager, what were you thinking? They go, I don't know. I wasn't thinking. Yeah. And that's because they have low impulse control. So if we're exchanging inappropriate pictures, we have low impulse control. It also can end up where it gets very daring. We're getting other kids involved, and we begin to do things because not only we're not thinking, but there's peer pressure. And it ends up being digital bullying behavior.
Well, let's talk about the bullying aspect, because that's what I read about. It can lead to bullying if those images get in the wrong hands.
Right.
And then the bullying leads to depression later in life. So here's my question for you. How do you get teenagers to buy in? Because they send off these images in the moment, and then they end up in the wrong hands, they get bullied. But how do you get them to buy in that no matter what you send digitally, it could be out there forever, and you're dealing with the ramifications forever?
Right, and they don't fully understand that. And they see that kids are doing this, and it's almost in some frightening way the new norm. It's how we date. It's how we communicate. Now, as odd as that may sound, I'm sending pictures to somebody who I might like to get to know.
Right. And I read that this is the modern day dating. So last question, how do you get your teenagers to buy in that this is inappropriate and not sound like an old fuddy-duddy who's out of touch with their teenagers?
Well, if they're acting out, that's a sign that something is going on. If they're doing this and sending pictures, there's usually others involved, and it will take them where they don't want to go. So I like the parent who says, I look at my kids' phones. You got to stay in the game with them. It's not about punishing them or shaming them. It's not about that. It's teaching them to really be have good digital hygiene, if you will. That's a foreign concept right now, and we're seeing a lot of social apps that are encouraging kids in groups and what we call herds to do things that are really inappropriate.
It's being engaged as a parent and a grandparent, being involved.
Engaged.
Always good information.
Thank
Dr.
you.
Jantz, good to see you.
You bet.
Marnie, back to you.
Digital hygiene, I like that, Dr. Jantz.